What does it mean to be an Alaskan? Beyond physical distance, what else sets us apart from other Americans, and how can we all contribute to making the future better for every resident of our state?
I just think that there has been some foundations that have been laid that make things unfair, and we all need to look at that together.
What will it take to create a more equitable Alaska? We'll discuss that idea with our guests tonight on a special edition of Alaska Insight. The PBS project American Portrait is a nationwide storytelling project. During the last year, people from across the country submitted videos that offer a glimpse into their lives and the things they care about. Let's take a quick look at what the program is about.
I was raised to believe, despite where I came from,
that I could literally be anything I wanted to be.
I want to leave a legacy in the songs that I write.
I was born and raised in Las Vegas.
I go to the University of Arkansas.
My office is the great outdoors of Alaska.
I love bringing other people together.
I feel like I'm doing something important.
I had loving, supportive family members who pushed me to dream big.
Good evening. There are a number of great Alaskan contributions to the videos that have been collected by the American Portrait Project, and throughout the hour we'll see some of them. Alaskans shared personal reflections on a range of topics, from the importance of family traditions to subsistence, to celebrating work, love, and adventure, to advocating for working together to end racism. Alaskans have a lot of can-do spirit and a deep sense of connection to the state. Let's explore some of what it means to be an Alaskan in this time of social and political unrest, and how we can come together to create an Alaska that is a leader in the nation for equity, health, and wellness. Joining me to talk about how we can achieve these goals for our future is Cheryl Williams, Program Coordinator with the Alaska Humanities Forum. Andrea Fuatai Tumalatai is a Youth Teaching Fellow with Storyworks Alaska. Janelle Everett is the Director of Recruitment for Illicksavik College. Les Guerra is a former state legislator, and Jacqueline Estes is a national correspondent for Indian Country Today and a longtime Alaska journalist. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We know that Alaska has a lot of strengths. Let's start with some thoughts from our guests about what they consider to be Alaska's biggest challenges. Janelle, start us off. Where are the areas of concern for you for Alaska's future health?
Thank you, Lori, for having me. I think the first thing I would look at is the sense of community that it appears no longer exists in Alaska. For many years, I felt that when I first moved here, and that seems to be lacking now. So if we could get back to the sense of we're all in this together, and what affects one Alaskan affects all Alaskans, I think that we can move not just our state forward, but our country as a whole.
All right, thank you. Maybe we'll drill down a little bit more in a while about your thoughts there about today versus years ago. Andrea, how about for you? What do you see as challenges for the future of younger Alaskans?
Hi, thank you for having me as well. I think just like what Janelle was saying, even just being in the youth and everything, it's not the same, or it's not as it's not how it should be. You know, how we are now, I don't think it will benefit our future. You know, we need to make a change as soon as we can. You know, the sense of connection and that feeling of togetherness, you know, with everybody, I think that's where it's really lacking as well. And yeah.
So you think there's a lack of coming together? Do you see that quite a bit? Do you see that more in people that are older, or is that also true for younger people?
No, I strongly believe that it's in the youth, to be honest, where it lacks the sense of community, to be honest. I think the older folks, they had it down packed with like coming together and all of that, but I don't know, something with the generation coming up, something happened to us, and I just think we need to fix that before it gets any worse, if that makes sense.
That's a really interesting insight for us, and hopefully we can talk a little more about that. Les, let's turn to you now as a former state representative. Is it our fiscal situation or another area that is most concerning to you for the state's future?
The fiscal situation is just math, and it just takes the courage by leaders to deal with it. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is, other than coffee, is what's going to give people a chance in life to succeed, right? Whether or not you're born with privilege or not born with privilege, the thing that drives me and the thing that concerns me is whether or not people are going to have a chance at opportunity and a fair shake in life. As I see class sizes get bigger, as I see attempts to get rid of what little pre-kindergarten we have in the state, we rank in the bottom 10 in the nation in pre-kindergarten. When all the studies say that you'll earn more, your chances of graduating high school and college are greater, your chances of staying out of jail are greater when you enter into grade school and kindergarten ready to read and ready to learn. And those things, the things that give and grant people the opportunity to be successful in the world, are things that right now we're lagging in and that are being cut away rather than grown, so people have a real chance.
All right, thank you. Jacqueline, let's get your initial thoughts here. Where are the pinch points as you see them that hold us back?
Well, it's kind of the whole ball of wax. Oh gosh, that's my phone, sorry. So, I mean, we're one of the wealthiest states in the nation, and yet we're in a recession, and we've been losing thousands of jobs every year for years. And I feel like some of the critically important infrastructure, the systems, are either broken or they're falling apart. And two that come to mind are the state ferry system, and then, gosh, I forgot my second thought. Anyway, criminal justice. I'm sorry, I was distracted by my phone. So the rates of incarceration and the people who are in prison and how long they're in for and that kind of thing.
All right, thank you. So the very infrastructure systems that we have, you see crumbling. Les was talking about the need for education to help lift people up. Cheryl, let's turn to you now. You've been bringing Alaskans together through a humanities forum project called Conversations Across Generations. I was honored to be part of that first group. There's a lot to explore about this, and hopefully we'll get into some more of that throughout the hour. But when you reflect on what you've been hearing from these cohorts that the Humanities Forum has brought together, what stands out to you as our challenges as Alaskans for our collective future? What did you hear in those conversations, and of course your own thoughts?
Well, combination of both, Lori, and I would be remiss not to thank you for this opportunity to share tonight. The revelation that racial equity is a lifelong journey and that it's not linear. We really have to understand that these conversations are ongoing. It's not a one and done. You need to engage. You need to engage with people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, and most likely disagree with their whole heart and mind with what you want to say. So it's learning how to have these conversations and have them in a way that's productive and everyone feels that their voices are heard and not necessarily understood, but you're given the empathy and the respect to have your opinion. You know, at some point, people think you have to change somebody's mind. You have to have them care for you first and foremost. If they don't care about you, then they won't make decisions that will affect change in a positive way. And the more we have these conversations, the more it's uncovered that people want to be heard.
You know, I really like the way you put that we have to learn how to have these conversations, that it's not an easy thing to sit with people of different generations, different ethnicities, and talk about sensitive and sometimes tough issues. And so learning how to have those conversations, as you said, to be heard, maybe we don't change minds, but at least if we're respected and heard, that's a wonderful step in the right direction to more harmony. Thank you, Cheryl. Now let's consider our own identity. What does it mean to all of you to be an Alaskan? Is it your cultural connection, family, the beauty of the state, fishing for salmon perhaps? And what sets our state apart from others, both what you see as the positives and the negatives? Cheryl, I'm going to stay with you. What does being an Alaskan mean to you, and what sets us apart, both the good and maybe the not so good?
You know, I hate to lead with the not so good, but you know, the Army brought me here and I was kicking and screaming when I showed up because I didn't know how to live in an igloo. But guess what? That was not the case. And now I'm living and loving and happy to be here. The idea that we're so far removed from the flagpole, you know, we have terms for lower 48. And I heard somebody say Southern 48 the other day. We are
outside.
Considered outside.
Yes.
And those who are outside are free thinkers. We don't have the boundaries of the folks that are locked into a system. If something's going to start, it's probably going to start in Alaska. If there's going to be an idea that someone can do whatever they want to do, the way they want to do it, it'll probably be in Alaska. We are just that kind of bold and brash, and we can handle the elements, so we think we can handle everything else, which is why it fits me perfectly to be here. You know, 3 brothers, 1 sister, and who's the one that joined the Army? So this is the land of the brave, the bold, and the ones that don't see challenges, they see opportunities.
All right, that's a really interesting thought about an idea starting here. We know that there's a lot of free thinkers and libertarian leading folks in Alaska, a lot of people that came to Alaska to hide out from others because they just didn't want to be around other people. So I can see where you're coming from that perspective. Jacqueline, let's turn back to you. Being Alaska Native means your connection to Alaska is, of course, different than those of us who migrated here. But you've lived in other places too. How does your home state compare?
Well, I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm almost homesick as soon as I leave the state. I feel deeply connected to Alaska and I love it here. I saw some webinar where somebody said, and they were complaining, and he got offered a job in Alaska, and they were acting like they were being sent to Siberia. And my perception of Alaska is so different from that. And like I said, I just love it here. So when I go outside, one of the things that strikes me is the lack of wilderness. And then how everything is this, there's not very much character. You know, if you go to, especially if you're on business trips and you're kind of from the airport to the downtown, to a hotel, to a conference center, and so on and so forth, that's not a great way to see a city. But you really come away with the sense that a lot of the lower 48 metropolitan areas are very similar to each other. And I think we're different. I think we're unique.
I agree. I think we are as well. Thank you. Les, your thoughts about what it means to be an Alaskan and what you see as our challenges compared to other states, other parts of the United States.
Yeah, I think what it means to be Alaskan is in part different for everybody else. For everybody, I think we all share the love of the beauty that we have in the state. We share the love of the community we have in the state. I think people, if left to their own, would be able to solve problems. But with the beauty, if you think about our Alaska, which has the last great wild fish runs in the world, that has the amazing wildlife and game. When you think about those things, and I've been lucky enough to, even though I grew up in difficult circumstances through foster care, I've been lucky enough to be successful enough. But I think about those things, enjoying the outdoors. It requires that you be able to buy a pair of hiking boots and a fishing rod, or a rifle if you want to go hunting. And there are so many people in Alaska, especially in the urban areas, but in the rural areas, well, especially in rural areas too, who grew up with very, very little. And so often people can't enjoy this beautiful place that you see on TV, the hiking in the mountains or the fishing or the hunting or the wildlife viewing or the travel around the state without money. And that goes back to, what are we going to do to make sure people have a fair chance to opportunity to succeed? And when you succeed, that helps you enjoy the state with a pair of hiking boots, with a fishing rod, with the ability to take a flight up to maybe Nome or Kotzebue or see some of the places around the state. The enjoyment of Alaska is in part related to your ability to access Alaska. And if we don't have a society that gives people the education and tools they need to succeed in life, it hurts me to be out there in the outdoors and see a lot of middle-class people, but not see people who grow up in poor urban areas or poor rural areas.
Do you think that is that disparity larger here than in other states? Because those things are certainly true in other parts of the U.S. as well.
I think they're large. Like I said, we do very badly in a number of categories. We rank #1 in so many different categories, from child abuse to domestic abuse to the things that impact children in a way that they grow up with a burden that they may never overcome. And then you add to that the lagging education system that could be much better and used to be much better, and a university that trains people for jobs so they can succeed and get the jobs that enable them to get to the outdoors and to get to the beautiful places. And that university is being decimated at a time it should be growing. We should make sure we have quality education that is affordable for people so they can succeed. And we're taking steps backwards in the last few years on those things. And I worry. And you see people leaving the state because of that, because they don't want to raise their children without knowing there's a commitment to public education in the state. And they see a university that trains people both for jobs and degree programs being decimated. And I just, when I'm out there in the wilderness, I've been lucky enough to be able to buy the things that get me out there. I don't see people who, of all backgrounds. I don't see enough people, I think, who grow up without privilege out there.
All right, thank you. Andrea, let's turn to you as a young Indigenous person. What are your thoughts here about both what it means to be an Alaskan and what you see as some of our challenges compared to other places?
I think that to be an Alaskan, I don't think it really has to do with cultural background and things like that, but I do believe that being an Alaskan means loving the lifestyle and the fishing, just loving what Alaska has to offer. And I think that some of the challenges though, just like Bless mentioned, we rank #1 in a lot of good things, but we also rank a lot more in the negative areas, and it's probably one of the biggest challenges, especially because we're a state that nobody really knows, but if they hear we're #1 in domestic abuse and stuff like that, nobody's gonna ever come here and nobody's gonna want to look into Alaska more. So yeah.
I really appreciate your thoughts there, because that's something I really agree with you about, the fact that we have such terrible rates of violence against women holds women back from, holds the state back from attracting professional women to Alaska. And so it's important for us to address those things and change those. Thank you, Andrea. Janelle, you didn't grow up here, neither did I. But you've been here for a lot of years and lived in different parts of the state. What do you feel is your identity as an Alaskan? And what do you see as the brightest aspects here and what's kind of bleak?
Well, first of all, I wish I had come here sooner. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't. I'm a transplant, but I think I also am kind of selfish in that I don't want to share the beauty of Alaska. I don't want to share that with people from the outside, which makes me very selfish, but at least very honest. I think what makes me an Alaskan is that coming here, I was reminded of what my parents had taught me, which is sharing, caring, taking care of each other, looking out for each other, things that we're supposed to do. And in the rural villages that I've lived in, because I love living in rural Alaska, they talk about their cultural values, and their values are the values that my parents taught me. And so I'm able to embrace and really enjoy the places that I've lived and absorb the culture and be welcomed into the culture, which for me is a really big deal. I live in Barrow and we have whaling here. And the first time I got to help with a whaling crew was by accident. I went over to talk to someone and the person I went to talk to said, "Hey, get over there and help with this. We're going to do a community feed today." And they put me over with the teenage girls. And even though that was the kind of the lowest of the jobs, I felt very honored because I was asked to do this. And so that, along with just other places that I've been and the people that I have met on this journey have been amazing. And they've embraced me and allowed me to get into their culture and learn. And that's been fantastic for me. Again, I just wish I had come here sooner. But as Cheryl said, everything starts here in Alaska. And that includes the really, really cold temperatures that we have. As you know, we've been going through some minus 65-degree wind chills this winter. And I love it. But I then get to call my family on the East Coast and say, "Hey, you got some cold weather coming, get ready in about 10 days. But everything here is just, it's bigger, and I think we're better than everybody else, which again sounds so selfish and so, I don't know, but I also think that, you know, when I went back to, going back to the fact that there used to be a sense of closeness here that doesn't seem to be here anymore. For instance, the earthquake that happened in Anchorage, nobody died in that earthquake. That was amazing to me. But if there had been major tragedies, who's going to want to come and help us? And that's why I always ask, who's going to want to come and help us? If by chance we have a tsunami here in Barrow this time of year, who's going to want to come to the Arctic and help us? I think people from other parts of Alaska would, but maybe not those people from the lower 48. So for me, being an Alaskan is that I get to learn and envelop myself in different cultures that have the same values that I was raised with, even though I wasn't raised here.
All right, thank you so much for that. I wanted to let our audience know too that you can drop comments into our Facebook page if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll collect those here if you want to ask some questions of the guests or you have comments that you'd like to make. Right now, let's watch part of one of the Alaska video submissions, and then we'll discuss with our panelists how the pandemic has affected the lives of Alaskans. This clip is from Joshua, an Anchorage resident and filmmaker. He is answering the prompt, "My Life Right Now," and he describes parenting during the pandemic.
It's been really interesting because I have the kids here at home where they're in virtual school right now. Well, first of all, my daughter she's pretty independent with her schooling. I see her setting up Zoom sessions with friends and they're recording a podcast or they're starting a band or she's taking art classes on YouTube. And my son, he has needed a little more attention. I think that's something that is creating an interesting dynamic just in our culture right now is what about the parents that can't be there to one-on-one with their children, to tutor their children. And then you have parents that can just hire a tutor, which has really created a class distinction. They haven't been able to see their grandpa on my side, or their uncles. And what we did is we started playing Dungeons and Dragons on Zoom, and the kids really fell in love with that.
I'm gonna attack with my daggers again and try to do another spinning blow.
And we have a laptop set up. We have webcams. Everyone's at their homes, and we have my two brothers, and my dad, and the kids. And we set up some. I'm a filmmaker, so we set up some aperture lights, little tiny lights, and I set them to candlelight or a fake or fire effect. And we set them there. It's really dramatic, and the kids dress up in costumes.
This is an area where we can hopefully start to better understand how difficult the pandemic has made life for some Alaskans and how those difficulties may be different depending on your ethnicity. Les, how has COVID affected your life and work, and what are your observations regarding the effect on others? You've been involved in, as you were speaking about earlier, in advocating for improvements to Alaska's foster care system. So working on behalf of kids who don't have the same family support that many of us do.
Yeah, well, I think the last statements were right there. If we didn't already know it, COVID has revealed the sort of class and income disparities throughout the country, but in Alaska, if you don't have internet, how did you participate in Zoom school? If you have slow internet, how did you participate equally in Zoom school? If you had a parent who didn't have the luxury of being able to work at home, how did that child get the support they needed to get through school? The income disparities even go through today to the sort of vaccination phase where, you know, it's not really a secret that those middle class people and others, I think are getting vaccinated at a much higher rate. And that's a national thing. So COVID has sort of exacerbated, I think, the disparities that we have in terms of wealth and income in the state. I know I go to the Anchorage Neighborhood Health Clinic, and they have had a very hard time getting vaccinations to the people with at the lowest income levels. And you know, middle class folks are all talking to each other on Facebook and you know, have the sort of social media networks that tell them how to get in line for a vaccine and all that sort of stuff. And COVID has to have been more difficult for people who live in smaller places with less resources. And certainly the foster youth that I work with have struggled like crazy. There you have people who are living a paycheck away from maybe not having a place to live. And a lot of people lost their paychecks during COVID for sure.
Absolutely. Cheryl, how about for you and your family? Has COVID affected your work, your family members, your friends?
I have family and friends in every socioeconomic bracket. And as a result, just what was described by Les has happened throughout. So I am one of the few that's fortunate enough to work from home, but I have to work for folks who can't get to the computer like Les described. So changing work, distribution of information, knowledge, connection. We have been revisiting, in some cases, old school paper. You know, there's a novel idea. Going back to pen and paper to communicate with each other. My family, I'm Jamaican by birth and proud to be American, but my family's international. And going to Zoom has been a blessing for our family to connect in a way that we haven't been doing in the past years since we're spreading further and wider. We're now from Beirut to Jamaica, you know. So when it's the family that is still in Jamaica with a slower internet, or they have more than 5 faces that want to get on the camera to say hi, or it's you know, the PhD in New York at Columbia having to draw pictures to explain some of their more heady ideas to the rest of us. So it's using resources in different ways. It's reimagining what communication feels like to people. It's understanding how important connection is to everyone. The idea that I can see how tall you are, Lori, is a big deal for me. Somehow my mind will associate that with different things. And I miss, like most of us, the human connection, but because we've had to rethink how important it is, the phone is actually being used as a phone these days, right? And you're wanting to hear voices, you're wanting to see people when they're talking to you. It's going for something deeper and more to the essence of who we are, is what the money affects those connections, but all across the board, we want to maintain connections. So when I got a letter in the mail, I was so excited because that's the kind of world we're revisiting right now.
It's true. Some of the, as someone referred to it, the dirt road of the communications highway are old-fashioned letters, but it's awful nice to visit that road sometimes. Jacqueline, your thoughts. What do you see and hear in the Alaska Native community about the stress of the pandemic and how it's affected families, work? Certainly with the history in Alaska of a century ago when the Spanish flu pandemic so greatly decimated populations in rural Alaska, and that those stories passed down and memories affected people during this pandemic, just the stress of that collective memory. So what are you hearing in the community about the economic and also psychological stress of what's been happening?
Well, I appreciate that you brought up the history of pandemics among Alaska Natives, because those came up. I noticed them particularly when in the Bristol Bay area, communities were having town meetings talking about the fishing season that was coming and the thousands of fishermen and seafood processing plant workers who were going to be flooding into the area. And everybody was really frightened at the prospect of people, because we didn't have very much COVID here then. This was back in June. Everybody was really frightened at the prospect of people coming in from the lower 48 and bringing this disease, which seemed to spread so easily and so quickly. And people at these town meetings were actually saying, let's not have a fishing season, even though that's where they get all of their annual income. And so, and what I heard from community after community was that they wanted to protect their elders as the repository of language and culture. And people placed a lot of value on what their elders meant to the community or mean to the community. So that was happening, outside Anchorage. My relatives here in Anchorage were really hurt by having their income dramatically reduced, and they were, living on unemployment. And then People Mover shut down, or it went to, the buses weren't coming as often, libraries closed. And there were a lot of resources like that lower income people make use of that became unavailable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for going over some of those impacts across the state. Andrea, how about your observations, especially in relation to education during school closures, and how students are doing during this time? Who do you see thriving and who's struggling?
So with the education system now, especially everything on Zoom and all of that, I think it just forced us kids to basically try to learn for ourselves, if that makes sense. Although the teachers try their best, to give us the best, lessons and try to get us working with them, it's not the same. And I think other kids and other students actually can agree with this, that they're not learning as much as they did in class, you know. And yeah, but I do think that, you know, with everybody slowly going back to school, it did create this, I'm not sure what to call it, but it did create like this excitement for all the kids, you know, to have that social interaction again, because our generation is mostly like, we grew up on phones and stuff. So before the pandemic, everybody was just stuck to their phones, you know, walking around school on their phones. But now, when I got to see kids at school, everybody, like, I didn't see no phones at all. Everybody was just interacting. And I think that was one of the best things that came out of this pandemic. You know, everyone's living life in the moment and all of that. But I don't think I would say that I can see who's struggling and who's not struggling. I think it's just a matter of the students themselves, you know, if they're actually putting in the effort to get the education that's given to them.
It's so great to hear you say that you saw people connecting on that human level with each other instead of being 3 feet away and texting each other. That's fantastic. A very small but significant bright light in an otherwise pretty bleak situation. And it sounds as if there's a new appreciation for teachers and helping in your education as opposed to trying to do it on your own. So those are all positives. Janelle, how has the pandemic affected your work as a recruiter? You go out to villages trying to get Alaska Native students into a college track at Illisagvik. Have you been able to do any of that?
I stopped traveling last February, was when I made my last trip. I was scheduled to do several village trips or several trips for recruiting after that, but that all shut down. It's been difficult for me. And what I said initially was, and I continue to say, God meant for us to touch each other and be able to see and talk to each other. By the way, who knew that kids would want to actually go back to school? You know, and I'm seeing a lot of that with teenagers and with kids in general. For me, as a recruiter, it was difficult, but we had already offered a lot of our classes online here at Illisagvik. And so the idea that we had to then take some classes like our construction trade classes and our workforce development classes and figure out a way to put those online, it was challenging, but our faculty did it. It was difficult. We have very slow internet here in rural Alaska. And I'm sure not just here on the North Slope, but across Alaska in rural areas, there's slow internet. And it's ironic because last week, Illisagvik College met with the North Slope Borough School District, and they were talking about challenges to the students. And one of those challenges was the slow internet. For me, the fact that I can't go out and talk to kids and interact with them and, you know, just walk into a school, and especially with teenagers and talking to teenagers and being able to recruit them. And it's been difficult because that's my job, is to be able to go across the state. And I'm not just, fortunately, not just here on the North Slope, but as far away as Metlakatla. And I was calling last week saying, are you guys open back up? Because I want to make you my first visit. This needs to be the first place that I go. So it's been difficult here. We were very fortunate here at Illisagvik College, again, because we all kept working. The college, our administration, made sure we all had laptops. If we needed printers, they got printers. Some of the IT guys they'd either come to our homes or they would send it home with us and say, I'm going to talk you through how to hook it up. For me, that's a big deal because I was saying, no, I need actually someone right here in my home because I can't do this. But we were blessed that we kept working. Now, I have a niece in Alabama. She's a single mom, and she had to make the choice. Do I, keep my son out of school and keep working and stop working, or do I send him to school and so that I can go to work? And I said to her, I will pay for whatever you need. Do you need faster internet? Does he need a laptop? Tell me what he needs, because I don't want him to fall behind. And fortunately, we were able to work together. And my family as a whole, we were blessed because we all kept working. And we pitched in to help her as best we could whenever she needed it. There was a joke that when COVID first hit and the schools closed down, there was a joke that parents were angry at the teachers because going to those parent-teacher conferences, the teachers were talking about what great kids they had. And after 3 months, the parents were wondering whose child they were talking about, because now they've spent nearly 24 hours a day at home with this child, and they're wondering, whose child were you talking about? Because mine is not the angel that you said it was. So it's been very interesting. And Lori, for me, the saddest part of this pandemic and what it's doing to our kids is seeing the faces of little 3 and 4 year olds who have no clue why all of a sudden someone has strapped this thing onto their little faces and they have to wear it. And it's just so sad, but we're going to move through this, and we're going to keep going, and it's all going to be okay, is what I'm telling myself.
Janelle, I wanted to ask about when you're making those trips out to visit families, how significant is that face-to-face interaction with families that maybe are considering college for the first time for a member of their family? Do you find that when you're calling someone on the phone that you can get the same sort of success as far as numbers of young people that you're bringing into the fold, into education, as opposed to when you can actually physically visit them in their homes?
It's harder doing it on the phone. It's easier when I actually go to the communities, because sometimes I'll go to a community, and especially when we're talking first generation college student, a student will say to me, I want to go to college, but my parents don't want me to. And the first question I ask is, are your grandparents still alive, and do they live in the community? And if so, let's go knock on the door of your grandparents. I'll talk to them, because a lot of grandparents still have considerable sway on their parents and say, I know this is what you're saying, but your child is going to go to college. They need to go to college. And of course, the worry for some communities and some families is if they go to college, they won't come back to the community. And so that's a concern as well. But
sure,
I try to encourage students to, if you know that you want to come back to this community, when you graduate, focus on a career that will bring you back home to your community.
Thank you. I wondered about that, that personal connection versus phone, especially as you said, with families that are first generation going to college. So thank you for that, Janelle. Let's see another clip from the Alaskan contributions to the American Portrait Project. Alan celebrates the cultural importance and joy that comes from harvesting the bounty of subsistence hunting and gathering.
Ayaginachalgo, Yupiugo, Mamteresher Mungunga, Dagwam Mantalachdo, Valdez Army. Hi, my name is Alan Ayaginachdal, and I am Yupik. I'm from Bethel, Alaska, but right now I am living here in Valdez. A tradition that I carry on is the harvest of subsistence foods, whether that be through berry picking, plant foraging, or occasionally partaking in hunting and fishing. This has taught me to tread lightly on the earth, not to over harvest, and I get to partake in camaraderie when I get to share my harvest, or I feel gratitude when others share with me. Another aspect of this is that it has taught me to revere the earth and the land that provides me with this opportunity to harvest food. I rely on a healthy ecosystem to provide these nutritious foods, and with that, it has inspired me to try to use my voice to protect the earth, do everything I can to make sure that we're able to enjoy a stable climate, and us as indigenous people get to pass on our ways of life and practice. And so I hope there are allies out there that can help us with that. And I hope to pass this on to generations to come. Thank you. Bye.
I really love that clip. Jacqueline, I want to turn to you. The importance of tradition and maintaining language and culture. We know that young people who feel connected to their culture do better socially, educationally, emotionally. Given that well-documented evidence, what can and should all of us do to help prioritize that connection so that young people really thrive?
Oh gosh. Well, let me say something else first, and that is Les talked about some of the problems and challenges that Alaska is facing, and they're double or triple. There's a real urban-rural divide in Alaska, and the lack of flush toilets and running water in dozens of villages is just one part of that. And the high cost of energy and all kinds of other things. So as far as helping, I mean, the regional corporations have created foundations that have really put a lot of money. And I'm from Southeast, and that's what I have the most experience with language and culture programs. And I think, everything has changed from when I was a child. When I was young, it was not popular to, there was much more overt racism than there is now. And being Native there was very little pride associated with it, that you made vocal, that you demonstrated outside of the Native community. And now, because of Celebration, which is this huge cultural gathering every other year, thousands of people show up with beautiful regalia. We have a parade. So things like that. The other thing is getting elders accredited or certified or whatever it takes to be in the schools and to teach language. And one of the people I interviewed about language was saying it was like teaching Tlingit to children as opposed to adults. It's like night and day. She said, I say things to the kids and the next day they run up and they're saying it back to me. And, whereas adults are just struggling to, with the pronunciation and to remember the words. So, I think that if you can get these kinds of educational programs financed and supported in the communities, that would help a lot. And what comes with the language is the culture. It's not just, I saw a film a long time ago, More Than Feathers and Bows. And what they were saying is, what you see when people put on their regalia and dance, that's just one small part of what it is to be Native. And I think that if the elders are in the schools and teaching the language, they're passing on a lot about values and how to look at the world and that kind of thing. So those are some things that could be done.
Thank you very much. That was very well put. Andrea, how about you? What are your thoughts for how we can better support young people so they feel that connection and pride in their heritage and educate across cultural lines as another way to help end racism?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
My audio.
No, that's fine. Your ideas for how we can better support young people so that they really feel pride and connected to their culture and their heritage, and how to help support educating across cultural lines to help end racism. It's one way of, better understanding between people is a way to address racism.
I think, to be honest, I think there's nothing we can, other people can do. I think it's all on, if you're speaking specifically on youth, I think it's all on the youth. It depends on them. If they want to make a change, then they have to be like committed and they have to have that mindset to change. I'm not sure if there's any way we could like make them do stuff. I think it all just depends on the kids, to be honest. And for me personally, if sorry, I'm all over the place, but if for me, I think if I'm really not sure. I think just if everybody just shows out, you know, with their culture and shows like the beauty in it and everything like that, I think it'll give the kids confidence, because nowadays I think kids care about what other people think and all of that. But if everyone just shows out with all the confidence in their culture and all of that, I think it'll make them want to do it as well.
Yeah, it's the more that it's visible, the more comfortable people will be in displaying their culture and their regalia themselves. Absolutely. Les, what's most needed from your perspective to help bring equity into cross-cultural understanding in order to foster more respect?
I think we've all learned in the last year. We've seen the income disparities. We've seen the discrimination that still exists in this country and in the state. I see a silver lining. When my wife, Kelly, and I moved up to Alaska 33 years ago, we saw a place where you could make a difference. It's a small enough state, even though big in geography, where you can make a difference in the state. 700,000 people. There aren't a lot of other states where a kid growing up in foster care could have become a legislator, but that happened in this state. And I think those problems that we see are problems that are fixable. And because I think people's eyes have been opened. People's eyes have been opened the last year to the injustices we have in this state and in this country. And if those haven't motivated enough people to want to change things, I don't know what will. I think there should be, and there are enough people who want to change things. So the next generation is much more colorblind. So the next generation understands that everybody deserves the right to succeed and be able to live that life that gets them into this beautiful outdoors in Alaska. When we moved here, we saw the most beautiful place in the world. It's still the most beautiful place in the world. We just want people to be able to enjoy it. And I think Alaska has few enough people that your voice matters more and you can make a difference. And whatever it is that you see is the inequity or the injustice out there is something I think that you can work to address, whether it's working with a nonprofit or on a political campaign. I think you can make a difference in the state. And I think enough eyes have been opened during this past year that people know we have a lot of work to do. But in a small enough state, I think our voices are big enough that we can do that work to make things better for this and the next generation. So that you see people of all colors and all cultures out there enjoying Alaska, rather than some people who just can't get out of town because they don't have the means to do that.
All right, thank you. Cheryl, your family, as you noted earlier, really reflects a rich blend of ethnic backgrounds. How do you and will you continue to work to help your family feel that connection and also work to elevate the importance of culture all across Alaska and for all Alaskans?
Well, Lori, I'm Mama Bear, and the other grandmother is Mama Wolf. And Mama Wolf is a Inupiaq. And our shared grandson now has a blend of the Caribbean migration, which is my contribution. I'm Jamaican by birth. Father is the North Carolina migration. And this is Ancestry.com is letting us know more and more about what blends came up with this flavor of ice cream. And having he's 6 months old now, grandson, has just really made legacy and knowledge of the past and the beauty and the depth of the experiences of our different cultures to be a center of not only my work, but my daily conversations and my hopes for when little guy and I can have a conversation. I am now knee deep in genealogy, trying to find the documents that we do have. Because we come from different places, it's exciting to see all the different archives that already exist and are continuing to be improved daily when it comes to the search engines that we were able to use. There is a richness, of course, in the African American experience that because North Carolina has such a deep root, there's a lot to uncover there. In my daily work, the idea of exploring what a different perspective on history will do for the telling of history, because we know it was the victors that got a chance to write it. So revisiting that to tell a more balanced story to my new grandson is also on the top of my mind. But I also look to my African American other grandmothers, and we talk about what it's like to be around their family table. You know, what does the generational conversation sound like? And that was something else that's missing right now. So bringing back more of the generational conversations and not just having the youth or just the elders, but having everybody in the virtual room to hear the stories of our past and our present, and have us come together to decide how we as a family want to move into the future. And not just telling each other we wish we could, but 2021, a lot of the people around me want action. So you get to hear what the actions sound like from different generations. So it's been a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Janelle, as you were talking earlier about your job being getting rural Alaska youth into higher education, how do you think a balance between brick and mortar instruction and teaching, language and culture can and should be achieved to create more understanding and respect across cultural lines, both blending the two together? Is there a way that you see that can happen or is happening?
I think it is happening. I think it has to happen, and this virus has taught us that it has to happen and that it can happen. I think what we're going to have to do is recognize, as Andrea said, that this is a different way of learning. Actually, not being in a classroom, not being with your peers, not having your teacher in your presence is going to force us to learn differently. And I'm not sure that, I don't think it's as difficult as we think it is. I think that if we all change our mindset and realize that things will have to change and they can change for the better, we will be that change. And Andrea, I have faith in the youth. I really do. We are looking to you guys to, as Les said, the racism that we see that still exists, we're looking to you all to change that. And I believe that you will. So not a lot of pressure, but I think that's what we have to look for. We have to look at our youth and ensure they know that we expect them to do better than what we've done.
Thank you. Working for a healthier, safer, more respectful future means we have to confront the scourge of racism and all the ways it manifests and manipulates head on. Alaska has the unfortunate distinction of leading the nation in violence and sexual assault against women, and for Native women, the numbers are the highest. Anchorage resident Ingrid is the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Coordinator for the U.S. Attorney's Office here. She responded to the American Portrait prompt, "Now is the time."
Now is the time to bring attention to missing and murdered Native Americans and Alaska Natives. Ong ong, hello and welcome. My name is Ingrid Cumberledge. I'm Alaska Native Aleut and Tlingit from the Shawgan-Tagana tribe of Sand Point. I'm also the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Coordinator here in Anchorage, Alaska at the United States Attorney's Office, where our goal is to engage communities, families, law enforcement, and tribes in an effort to eliminate violence or reduce violence against Indigenous people. My heart aches for those families and tribes who have had missing and murdered family members, some of which have been close to my tribe and myself. Our families tell of domestic violence, sex trafficking, human trafficking, and murder. Now is a time for a call to action. Will you join your fellow Americans and stand up to support the end of this missing and murdered crisis for all Alaska Natives and Native Americans? Kagasakun, thank you.
The numbers are disturbing. 4 out of 5 Native women will be victims of violence in their lives. And as we've seen recently and repeatedly, this racial violence also affects Black and Asian people at high rates. The recent killing of 8 Asian women in Atlanta is a heartbreaking reminder of what a long way we have to go in our country to end racism and violence against women. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion about the future of our state and how we can all help support building an Alaska that leads the nation as a place that celebrates, honors, and respects its rich diversity of cultures and capitalizes on the realization that when true equity exists, we all prosper. If you were inspired by tonight's conversation and the American Portrait videos we featured, consider adding your own story to the mix with American Portrait online at pbs.org/AmericanPortrait. Links are at our website, alaskapublic.org/Alaska Insight. I'm Lori Townsend. For all of us here at Alaska Public Media, thank you for engaging this evening and considering how we can all come together to create a brighter future for everyone. Thanks and good night.